stay severe for a very short amount of time. And tomorrow, just like today, we're expecting some of those to linger up until around midnight. The good news is Sunday is looking much better for us. We'll have a look at that forecast in just a little bit.
Breaking in the last few minutes, the Georgia trooper charged with murder in the death of a Scrabbon County man has been booked into jail there. Jacob Thompson facing murder and aggravated assault charges. That shooting happened a week ago today. Investigators say 60-year-old Julian Lewis failed to stop for a traffic offense on Stony Pond Road. There was a short chase, and the trooper then used a pit maneuver, and Lewis's car ended up in a ditch. That's when investigators say the trooper fired one shot, hitting Lewis. There is a candlelight vigil tonight for Julian Lewis. That's happening at the Sylvania City Hall, 7:30 this evening. Lewis's funeral is set for tomorrow.
Leading local experts now say COVID cases in our area are starting to level off.
That means cases are still rising, but by about the same amount every day. For example, check the cases at our local hospitals today. AU Health rising by 161 cases, but that's been almost the same at least the last 2 weeks in a row.
And University Hospital only saw 8 new cases today. They have not seen a rise of more than 14 cases since last Monday. At both those hospitals, the number of people hospitalized remained steady.
Brady Travel spoke with local health experts about what this means going forward.
We're all looking for some good news right now, and seeing cases plateau is good news. But our hospitals are still fighting off the spike. For weeks, our hospitals under pressure. Now, maybe a chance to catch their breath.
We're plateauing, but we're plateauing at a high number.
Dr. Iwana Churka, medical director for infectious diseases at University Hospital, is still unsure if that's good news.
I think if you're being optimistic, yes, the degree of severity has not gone down as far as we can tell.
New data from the Georgia Department of Public Health shows numbers decreased 7% statewide last week, and the CDC found a 22% decrease in cases over the past 2 weeks compared to the 2 weeks prior.
The positive side of that, I think, is that it is a plateau over the last 3 to 4 weeks. We have remained about at that level.
But no one is close to declaring victory. University's hospitalization numbers are hovering in the 80s, and at AU, there's 70 COVID patients and 28 in the ICU.
Getting complacent is what caused this peak. And now we've got to learn to coexist with COVID-19.
Dr. Kuhl says it seems the community is doing better with that. The overall transmission of the disease is going down.
People are starting to get the message about wearing masks, washing their hands, and watching their distance.
Doctors Hospital told me they are seeing a slow but steady increase in cases. So health officials say now isn't the time to relax. It's the time to keep pushing these numbers lower. Reporting in Augusta, Brady Trapnell on your side.
Cases may be leveling off here, but that is not the case across Georgia, especially for kids.
In the last month, experts say they've seen a 90% increase in COVID cases among children. Cindy Heiberger takes a closer look at the numbers.
In Georgia, there are now more 10 to 17-year-olds who have tested positive for COVID than the 80-plus age group. It's changing how experts think about the virus, but not necessarily cause for panic.
171. That's how many kids under 18 officials say have tested positive at AU Health in the past 2 weeks. That means AU has seen more than 35% of their total pediatric cases in the last 14 days alone.
When we see disease occurring in a particular age group, that tends to spread within that age group because that's who we spend more time with.
While these numbers may seem scary, Dr. Philip Kuhl at AU Health says there are many reasons we should not panic. For instance, testing among kids has recently increased.
There is a testing bias in these numbers in that we previously have not tested a lot of pediatric patients.
AU recently announced they've opened testing sites specifically for pediatric patients, but they say that project was in the works well before the recent spike.
We knew with school starting that the demand for testing in pediatric patients was necessary.
And speaking of school, Dr. Kuhl says the latest increase in pediatric cases started before schools opened back up. It's part of the reason he still supports decisions to reopen for in-person learning.
This is a balance between the overall greater good.
We know the vast majority of children who contract the virus will have very mild symptoms, but there's still a lot we don't know
really whether or not this serves as a way of transmitting this in the community.
In Augusta, Sydney Heiberger on your side. And if you're interested in COVID testing for your kids or students, we have information about how and where you can get tested on Wrdw.com.
Meanwhile, Augusta Mayor Hardy Davis says it's important we don't lose focus now in fighting COVID. That's why he says he's extending the Augusta executive order for face coverings through the 7th of September.
The goal of the mask order, if we're going to slow the spread of the virus, if we consistently do that as a community, being our brother and sister's keeper, our elderly parents, our loved ones, our family, and our friends, if we do that on a consistent basis, we can slow the spread of the virus.
Mayor Davis is asking everyone to keep following the 3 W's. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. The mayor and other leaders doing their part to help with those first 2 W's. This was the second day they went around to a number of locations to hand out masks and hand sanitizer, like Golden Harvest Food Bank, the Salvation Army. Today they finished handing out all 20,000 masks donated by Augusta National. So now, looking at cases across the 2 states,
300.
we're also learning about new cases at the Richmond County Jail. 5 more inmates testing positive since last week. 3 of them were in a different block than the original outbreak, and the other 2 were arrested and brought into the jail. Sheriff Roundtree says they put the positive inmates in the same pod, but that's led to more cases among staffers. He says the sheriff's office has seen 45 cases with 15 people still recovering.
New today, the club at the center of this video faces 2 citations. Sheriff Richard Roundtree says they wrote country club citations for violating the state executive order about restrictions for bars and nightclubs.
And the sheriff says they're keeping their eye on other bars and clubs in Augusta. Wrdw tells us how they're doing that.
Last week, Mayor Davis and Sheriff Roundtree said there are no more warnings for businesses not following the rules for capacity and social distancing.
We will no longer be issuing warnings. If a violation is observed, the business will be cited, and the matter will be resolved through the judicial process.
Now, they're cracking down.
This is a life-saving effort by the city of Augusta.
The Richmond County Sheriff's Office say deputies randomly visited 44 bars and nightclubs in Augusta, but Roundtree said only a third were open and only 2 citations were handed out.
And the ones that were open were either at capacity or under capacity.
Both to the country club for this video taken 2 weeks ago.
Issued both owners and organizers citations for reckless conduct for violation of the governor's executive order.
But the department says they found another problem.
One of the issues in which we did note was that a few nightclubs, there were a large number of people in the parking area who were quickly dispersed.
Roundtree said these owners have to be responsible for their property.
And they were also responsible for the safety and security of their parking area.
And even with COVID numbers stabilizing, they don't want people to get comfortable.
And we just don't want people to relax. And then we dig ourselves right back in the hole and got to start back from square one.
Sheriff Roundtree said that they will have deputies out tonight and tomorrow randomly inspecting bars still. And he said if there is an incident, you can reach out to their office. Reporting in Augusta, Wrdw, on your side.
In that briefing today, Mayor Hardy Davis Jr. was also asked about Augusta National's decision to have no patrons. He says, like many of us, he's disappointed.
I've never been out to the Augusta National in November. I was looking forward to bright and brilliant colors, gold leaves, straw, and I'm not going to get a chance to do that.
He went on to say the Augusta National knows what's best for them. He says he knows they made their decision based on what was best for the safety of golfers, patrons, and staff.
New data shows a second wave of COVID sweeping through nursing homes across the country. Nearly 2,000 patients died from the virus in Georgia, more than 800 in South Carolina.
The I-Team's Liz Owens analyzed the most recent data released by the state of South Carolina.
In just 30 days, nearly 240 facilities across the state reported new cases of the virus, 14 of which we found are here locally. The American Healthcare Association, which represents long-term care facilities and assisted living facilities across the nation, released this data earlier this month. It shows COVID cases began to rise a second time in mid-July after initially declining in June. The same day AHCA released this data, the Department of Health and Environmental Control released this report summarizing all the new cases in South Carolina facilities over the last 30 days. 239 facilities reported having new cases of the virus, with more than 1,800 now positive for COVID-19. Nearly 40% of those positive are staff working in facilities. Locally, we found new cases in 8 Aiken facilities. The largest outbreaks are at Pruitt Health Aiken and Carlisle Senior Care of Aiken. 43 patients have tested positive at Pruitt Health of Aiken, and 9 have died. 37 patients and 7 staff members have the virus at Carlisle. 1 has died there. DEAC also reports cases in facilities in Edgefield, Orangeburg, Saluda, and North Augusta. According to the American Healthcare Association, community spread is to blame for the rise in COVID cases in long-term care facilities. Liz Owens, on your side.
And on the Georgia side, 41 nursing homes in our area have seen at least one COVID case. Between patients and staff, more than 1,100 people have tested positive. 128 people have died.
Wanted to show you the man deputies are looking for right now after a deadly shooting we told you about here yesterday. Damian Sanders is one of her murder and weapons charges. The shooting happened yesterday on Robert Street East in Perry. 28-year-old Garrett Kelly was killed there. If you know anything about the case, you can contact the Midlands Crime Stoppers, and that tip could earn you a cash reward of up to $1,000. Witnesses say Sanders was wearing a gray shirt, red pants, and drove off in a black sedan. He's considered armed and dangerous. To weather now as we check in with Chief Meteorologist